This video is designed to clarify what the definition of what is referred to as a related to chord. Okay, and in order to understand the related to, you have to understand also dominant chords. Okay, a dominant chord is a chord that leads down a perfect fifth because of its internal tritone and the presence of a leading tone. So in the key of C, the chord G7 has the note B is the third, and that's the leading tone to C, and so on. So dominant function is a very important harmonic event which creates a strong expectation that the next chord after the dominant chord will be a chord whose root is down a perfect fifth. This occurs naturally or diatonically in any major key when the 5 chord is played. The 5 chord with its 7th wants to lead back to 1. Well, in the same key, there's a 2 chord, and the 2 chord is a subdominant chord, and it has a very close relationship with the 5 chord in that it is a good preparation chord. It kind of has the effect of preparing the ear for the subsequent dominant chord. So here's the internal 3rd and 7th, the two most descriptive and important notes in a 7th chord. And you can see there's a kind of suspension that happens that gets us ready for the resolution here. Get the bass note right. Okay, so. And you can feel that it wants to go to. Okay, so that dominant function is enhanced by being preceded by a subdominant chord, and in particular, the related to, because there's what we call cycle 5 bass motion. When bass motion moves down a perfect fifth, there's an extra component of forward motion contributed by that bass motion. So there are other subdominant chords. For example, an F major chord could precede this. That's a subdominant chord, and that would achieve a similar preparation sound. But having this cycle 5 bass motion has a unique quality to it that is very popular in certain genres of music, specifically American songbook music and jazz. And this is where you will probably hear people referring to 2/5s, 2/5 chord patterns. Okay, so this is literally the 2/5 right here. This is literally the 2 and the 5 in the key of C. And there's a particular relationship here. This chord is a minor 7 chord, and this chord is a dominant 7th chord. This chord, the 2 chord, is a perfect fifth above the dominant chord. Well, these are absolutely indispensable attributes of a related to. Okay, so there's 3 things that have to happen to be a related to. The first chord must be a minor chord, or it could be a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which is what is the related to in a minor key. So that's one thing that has to happen. The second thing that has to happen is that the following chord has to be a dominant chord. So it can't be a minor chord, it can't be a major 7 chord, it can't be anything else, it must be a dominant chord. And the third thing that must happen is that the interval between the 2 chords must be down a perfect fifth. So when you're trying to figure out whether something is a related to chord or when you're trying to find a related to chord, remember those 3 things that must be present. The first chord must have a minor third. So that would be either i.e. either a minor 7 chord or a minor 7 flat 5. Okay, the second thing that must be true is that the second chord must be a dominant chord, dominant 7th chord, which of course is a major chord with a minor 7th. And the third thing that must be true is that the preceding minor chord related to, I'm putting in parentheses because that's the term for it, must be a perfect fifth above the dominant which follows it. Okay, so those three things must be true. So for example, so let's see how we can apply this more widely. So here's our list of 5 secondary dominants in a major key. We're looking specifically at the key of C. So say we take one of those. I'll just pick one at random. Say I'm going to choose E7, which of course is 5/7 of 6. And I want to create this related to sound. Actually, let me not do that one first. Let me do A7, 5/7 of 2. Okay, so I want to create a related to. So I see here it must be a minor chord. So I know that it's going to be a minor 7. The second chord must be a dominant chord. Well, it is. And the related to must be a perfect fifth above the following dominant. Well, a perfect fifth above A is E. So that means this chord must be E minor 7. If it's an E minor 7, it is a related to. It's in a related to relationship with the A7. It's not the actual 2 chord of the key we're in the key of C, but it is emulating this relationship right here. It's emulating that. Chord quality is the same. Interval distance from the dominant chord is the same. It's an emulation, so it's called a related to relationship. Now, how do we communicate that? Because after all, this is not the 2 chord, this is the 3 minor 7 chord. Okay, so we still have to call it 3 minor 7, and we still need to call this 5/7 of 2. Well, there's a symbol for this, and it's called the bracket. And the bracket is the way that we designate a related to relationship. So you'll notice that even though this is the 2 chord of the key, I'm still adding it over here because I'm trying to communicate that this 2 chord is actually in a 2-5 relationship with the 5 chord. If the 5 chord wasn't there, I would not put this bracket there. Okay, so the same thing here. This chord is the 3 chord, and this chord is 5/7 of 2. But this chord is in a 2-5 relationship with the following dominant chord because it's a perfect fifth above, and that's how we analyze it, by putting this bracket symbol. Now, what about minor 7 flat 5s? Well, minor 7 flat 5s can occur diatonically sometimes, but they can also be chosen just because they create a sort of a darker related to sound. For example, if my next chord, my next secondary dominant was E7, as I originally was going to do, the chord which is a perfect fifth above that is B. And I could put a B minor 7 there, but it turns out in the key of C, there is a diatonic B chord, which is B minor 7 flat 5. So quite often, people will choose that version of the chord to be the related to because it's diatonic to the key, and that helps connect it to the key a little bit more. So this would be an example of a 2-5 relationship where the first chord does fulfill this requirement, which is that it has a minor third, but it's not a minor 7 chord, it's a minor 7 flat 5. And this is more of this is the diatonic type of 2 chord in a minor key. So even though we're in C major, we are sort of temporarily hinting at A minor with this cadence. Again, it's not a modulation because we would have to spend more time in A minor to really establish A minor. What we're doing is we're temporarily leading very strongly to the A minor chord, which is the 6th chord. So that's what's happening. We're not modulating, but we want to analyze what's happening. We want to show that there is this subdominant to dominant relationship. So we add the 2-5 bracket. Again, it's fulfilling all 3 of these requirements. It's a chord with a minor third. There's a dominant chord following it, and the distance between them is down a perfect fifth. All 3 of those are true. therefore it's a related 2. It also happens to be the 7 chord of the key, and this happens to be 5, 7 of 3. 5, 7 of 6. So that's important too. Now, as a final way to make sure you understand it, let me show you what is not a related 2. For example, if I were to put the chord D minor 7 here, oops, and follow that with an A7, and you go on your checklist, you say, does the first chord have a minor third? Yes. Is the second chord a dominant chord? Yes. Is the distance between them down a perfect fifth? No. It is not down a perfect fifth. It's up a perfect fifth. It's down a perfect fourth. So this is not a related 2 because it didn't fulfill all 3 requirements. Okay, that's what a related 2 is. And remember, it's a thing because it's a great predominant, it's a great subdominant to dominant relationship. It's very powerful. It's very useful, and it creates a more circular, a stronger progression than just a dominant chord going down a fifth. It adds more sort of subtlety and elegance to that cadence by preceding it with the subdominant sound of the related 2 that is in a cycle 5 root relationship with the following dominant chord.